Yeah, the side we played tonight, their first half was as good as I've seen this year. They moved the ball really well, looked really damaging up forward. Their midfield's strong. They've got some really good backs down there that intercept as well. So, whilst we're not going anywhere near as well as we'd like, the side we played looked, $1 million tonight. So all credit to GWS and the way they played, and they might be hitting their straps at the right time, because I'd hate to run into them in September. They've got some good players playing some really good footy at the minute.
Welcome back. Damien Hardwick after the match last night. Richmond clobbered by 39 points by GWS, and the coach of the Giants, Leon Cameron, joins us. Leon, good to have you with us. Lee Matthews, Caro, Jimmy Bartell are with me. Big comments there. As good as I've seen this year, I'd hate to play them in September. How do you keep the lid on that?
Oh, look, we've got to get there yet, Tim. I mean, we know that the last few weeks we've been playing in this situation where, if you win, then you progress. If you don't, then clearly you drop out. So, we've got that next week against Carlton. I understand that there's, results going over the weekend can determine that, but right now we're in a must-win every weekend to play in September action.
Put it this way, are you pleased, surprised, delighted by what you're seeing at the moment? No doubt, pleased that, the footy that we're playing is more consistent. We've had some challenges over the last 8 weeks being on the road with a bit of inconsistency. I think we've been in a lot of games and we've played some really good footy even in some of those losses, but there's been some heartbreaking losses by a point here and there, or being up by 5 or 6 goals and then just dropping away in a quarter and getting beaten. So there's been some inconsistencies, but been pleased overall that we put a more solid performance for longer last night.
Leon, Lee Matthews here. Congratulations. I mean, they were just outstanding that first half last night. I just wanted to ask you a couple of big picture things. I mean, the whole best way to prepare, I reckon, is being rethought, because it's been forced upon guys. Like, you've been stuck away from home for, the best part of, is it 2 months now?
Yeah.
Roughly. Yeah. I mean, so you've been together for 2 months rather than going home to your own homes, right? So maybe that bonding part of it has an enormous plus. And secondly, the home ground advantage, which we know around world sport, traditionally the home team will win much more often than not. But it's more becoming the advantage of a home crowd is the significant thing. And with no home crowds, there's almost no home ground advantage anymore. Yeah,
you're right, Lee. I mean, the first thing is that, and it's hard to judge when you're on the road. I mean, we've seen some wonderful stories last year where, Geelong and Richmond played off in a grand final. It was a classic game, and they'd been on the road for 3 months as well. So there's some, probably there's some fors and against. Clearly we probably got an injection of excitement when the families arrived last Thursday before we played the Cats. I mean, we hadn't seen them for a while, and no doubt that injected another level of enthusiasm and excitement when they arrived. So I can clearly see that's noticeable. And in terms of that home ground, I mean, clearly when you rock up last week, for example, we play an away game against Geelong. You can hear everything going on because clearly there's no crowd. And last night, another example, where we played round 8 against Richmond and we got run down because, the Richmond faithful were, loud and roaring, and they ran over the top of us in round 8, whereas that wasn't there last night. So it's really intriguing and interesting. I mean, all we can probably concentrate on is playing some really good footy, creating our own enthusiasm. That's what I've been really impressed by the young lads on game day.
I'm not sure the Richmond faithful would have got them over the line the way you played last night, Leon. It's all the more, well, not surprising, but you've sort of crept up on a lot of us this year because there have been inconsistencies. You started the year pretty poorly, to be frank. I think you were 0-3. And obviously off the back of that famous now, or infamous for you guys, documentary, where I didn't feel it reflected that well of some areas on your team, on your leadership. Did you learn anything from that, or did you think it was unfairly edited, or were we unfair in our assessment of you, me in particular?
Well, I can't tell, Caro, because I probably haven't listened to a lot of it. And I'm not saying that in a disrespectful way. I just haven't listened to a lot of the commentary on it. I mean, when we were asked to do or participate in that in the documentary, it was a great opportunity for the footy club. And no doubt when you put yourself out there, there's always going to be things that you go, could we have done things better? And no doubt we could. We happened to have a year where we didn't make finals, whereas the year before we played in the grand final. So it's sometimes that luck of the draw, but you've got to be prepared for the good and the bad. And but in terms of learning, yeah, no doubt. But it's like anything. I mean, we're judged on win-loss in this business. We all know that. When you're winning, everything's rosy. When you're losing, it's like it's the end of the world. And I think, a good piece of advice I was told early in the piece was it's never ever that good, it's never that bad. And I probably stick to that because when you do lose, you learn a lot more. But equally, when you win, you're moving on and you're actually then worried about the next game like Carlton next week. So you don't have a lot of time to stop and evaluate all these things that are going on. So we started poorly this year. Although our first round against St Kilda is a really good game, we just didn't get the points. But then we know that the next two games we dropped our guard and we had to fight our way back. But that's been the good thing about it. We've sort of had that mentality that regardless of how many injuries you have or wherever you are, it doesn't matter. You've got to go out and play your best footy for as long as you possibly can. And that's what we've been doing, most weeks, although with some of those inconsistencies that have sort of crept into our game.
But this is footy being played in a pandemic, and you think that surprising results will happen, and it just seems to me you've coped so much better with the COVID restrictions on your life this year than your players did last year. And I wonder if there was something you did differently even though it came upon you differently this time.
Well, again, because we're judged on win-loss, I mean, if we won last year, that question wouldn't have been raised. I mean, there might be some minor things, but, I mean, there's a different set of challenges. We're in Queensland for a bit. We didn't have the families arrive at the back end of the year last year. We're dealing with different injuries, and clearly we're dealing with a couple of, challenges with some players deciding on their contracts as well. So, but in terms of, your day-to-day prep, your training, your recovery, all that sort of stuff, that really hasn't changed. I mean, no doubt spirit is always going to be a bit higher when you win, but it's hard to sort of line up 10 things from last year and 10 things from this year. There'll be a couple of little things that'll be a bit different, but equally, we're playing better footy because we've probably got some players that are having a better year than they were last year.
Last one from me. The last game of the year is against Carlton, and you have to beat them just to know you're going to be there, depending on results this weekend. As a coach who has found himself under a lot of scrutiny, fairly and often unfairly, do you feel for David Teague and what he's going through at the moment?
Absolutely. Lee sits on the panel there. He knows what a senior coach goes through, and we sign up. When you sign up as a senior coach, you understand there's going to be lots of scrutiny. I mean, you don't jump in if you don't think that's not going to happen. So when you're winning, clearly that lowers that backs off. But when you're losing, or it depends how you're losing, then that raises its head. And sometimes you look back and say they've gone really hard. I mean, it's hard for me to comment on the Carlton situation because clearly I've got my own issues here at the Giants. You're trying to get right every week in, week out. So, but, I'm 8 years in, and I remember in my first year, I think it was about my sixth game, there was talk that I mightn't have been the right person for the job because we got 2 back-to-back 100-point losses. And that can knock you around a little bit as a young coach. But having the right people around you, just supporting you and understanding and putting things into perspective is what you need. And I was lucky to have that when I was in my infant years at the Giants.
And you have now that football director who's giving you maximum support now, Leon.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and you're dead right. I mean, it's always an interesting one. I mean, because you know as well as I do, footy is an emotional game, and there's always going to be lots of people talking about it. And we were lucky enough to, salute the last couple of weeks, and no doubt the pressure goes off. But you lose a game and you miss out in finals, and all of a sudden it comes back on. So it ebbs and flows and goes ups and downs.
So for that, Leon, you talk about the emotion, you talk about your day-to-day, and we know hub life, I guess, heightens everything. Are you spending your week, I guess, coaching the emotion or personality of players more so than ever than the X's and O's? Because everyone's pointing to the way the Giants are playing on field, maybe some structural things and personnel have changed. But is it Monday to Friday just going around in the hotel, grabbing players, seeing where they're at emotionally, I guess?
Yeah, there's a little bit of that, Jimmy, because, everyone's got a different story. With family, some players don't have their family here, and some staff don't have their family here. And as good as it was when all the families arrived last Thursday, it was a great injection. But equally, you're looking around at the 10 or 15 faces that don't have them there because of whatever reason. So you are doing that. There's still a lot of education. We still do normal reviews. The review on Friday night will be done Monday, and we'll thoroughly look at our offence, defence, and how we won in that contested situation. So there's still a lot of that, and there's still opportunity to do lots of one-on-ones on game stuff. But we're also mindful that when there's time to shut off, that's the danger, Jim. The danger is because we walk past each other probably 15, 20 times a day from the lunchroom to your room or wherever it may be, it is dangerous sometimes to go, hey, let's go and have another talk about footy. So we've probably done that okay, but no doubt, coaches like myself can get carried away at times and want to talk too much footy. So I've got to check myself every now and again. So...
No, that's Leon. Just one further thing in terms of the way you've been setting up the games the last couple of weeks. Lockie Ash, did the role on Prestia last night, but have you actually gone a little bit more to, 2 or 3 things where there's actually specific matchups rather than team versus team systems? Yeah.
We sort of Lockie was probably he had a really good start to the year, and then as an example, probably as a second year player, he's only young, and he probably lost his way a little bit for a few weeks. Went out of the team, we brought him back in, and we threw him in the midfield. Even though he sort of took him as a halfback flanker, but we wanted to sort of target a couple of really good midfielders from the sides that we've played in the last 3 or 4 weeks, just to give him an opportunity to learn from them. And we feel as though he's progressing really well in that. And then you clearly we've got some back matchups that are, taking those one-on-one battles as well. So there's probably 3 or 4 of those sort of situations happening inside the 22 every week you play.
Leon, a final one, and you've indicated you don't want to get ahead of yourself. You've got Carlton next week, but I'm just asking you to maybe get 1 week ahead of yourself. Would you rather there was a bye or there wasn't if you're going into the finals as a part of the 5th to 8th group, which is where you would be?
It's an interesting question, Tim. I think we've benefited from the bye in the past when we've played finals. Been a bit banged up after 23 rounds, and we've had that bye, and then we've come out with a lot of energy in those next couple of weeks of finals. So it's benefit. I've only seen that benefit us. But in saying that, we're in such a unique situation. Does it make sense to keep on rolling? It probably does, because there's lots of sides, travel restrictions. We all know what situation we're in. So, but equally, you'd want as many fans at the games as you possibly can as well. So juggling those 3 variables is going to be intriguing. I think whatever the AFL throw up, we'll adapt to. And as I said, if we're good enough to beat Carlton and we are there, then if we play straight away the next week, then so be it.
Well, you're in form and you'll be wanting to
I think he just
maintain
sat on the fence there, Tim.
Perhaps so, yeah. Yes. He didn't mention the cherry-ripe nature of their form. Leon, great to have a chat, and congratulations. They're going really well at the right time.
Good on you guys. Thanks for your time.
Leon Cameron, coach of GWS. News from Hawthorn, a late change, and another significant one. Jager O'Meara out, Connor Downey is in for the Hawks. Must get to a break. Lethal injection coming up. Stay with us. 3AW football in the lead up to Hawthorn and the Bulldogs in Launceston, and it's brought to you by McDonald's.